Hello everyone, Kenti Tiger here with Bengali Engineering and Play. So you've been watching this series here, and we kind of took this to the end, at least the conceptual end. The goal was to reach the planet, and we just kind of left it hanging there as to whether the engineer actually did. So a little, just a tiny brief thing of background. Why did I choose the character I did to portray? So I'm totally stepping, if you haven't guessed it yet, I'm totally stepping out of character here, OOC, and back to the engineer here. So let me see, just for sake of clarity, am I familiar with naval engineering? The answer is yes. I'm actually a civilian engineer to the Navy. Have worked for the Navy now for 23 years total, a little over 23 years. I was active duty once upon a time, and shifted over to the civilian uniform, and have continued service. So now I serve those who serve. So naval things are still near and dear to my heart. I still deploy. I just finished up I think it was my 18th deployment over the course of 23 years. So definitely got a deployment or two, bounced around the world quite a few times in the process of all that. Met some wonderful people. Enough about me. What am I doing with the series? The series was purely for the sake of fun. So one of the things you notice on the titles is that this was survival, yes, but with mods. So the question has come up, two things. Why the heck did you use mods? Because that just takes all the fun out of everything. And I have a counter for that. And the second is, what mods are you using? So for the first response is, well, fun is according to those who are having it. So fun for me might not be fun for you. So I'm having fun. So what I hope here is that you saw a little bit of, dare I say, drama, a little bit of just going out and having a good time, and yet tried to stick within the, dare I say, the spirit of the game, which is to build stuff. That was the intention of the series. Jumping in, Kenti Survival Series is the world that I was using, which is really a copy of this one. The only differential here is I have actually stuck a couple planets into this world, and actually there were two large mining asteroids that were the 5-kilometer asteroids. I have taken one of those out. So there was some editing done to the world. The editing was done using Space Engineer's Toolkit. So if those, I know this is just absolutely unreadable because this is in UHD. But the SE Toolkit is extremely useful. It can load in your saved world and in fact fix things. I have had worlds that were so completely dead, and not dead by way of anything that happened. It was just worlds that were created and then a couple revisions of the game, and they were no longer usable. Space Engineer's Toolkit actually was able to read the worlds, to do some updating as it saved, because it was saving in the format that could be used by the newer era game, and then everything was fine again. So now, would you ever want to do that? The answer is probably no, because obviously there are things in the new revisions of the game that far exceed in many ways some of the aspects of the older game. Why did I do that? Well, I had things, which is to say ships and such, in a world, a couple worlds, that I wanted to save that I had never blueprinted. So I wanted to go back and blueprint those. Of course, today the reality is all of those are extremely outdated and obsolete, so they have gone into the obsolete folder now. But at least I have them, so I'm a pack rat. So anyway, SE Toolkit. I highly recommend it. It's maintained by those folks, those wonderful folks over on Midspace. They make a lot of really cool kind of under the hood type things. Alright, so back to here. So the survival series, this is the world I've been using. We're going to go into edit settings here so we can see what some of this looks like. This is the main page here. Realistic, I really kind of stay away from the cartoony sounds. And I know the arcade sounds, some of them are actually really neat, but so I try and stay with the realistic sounds. Offline. Why do I use offline? Offline lets you use local mods. So you've got a mod that is sitting locally. So if you are private, friends, or public, you cannot use local mods. They have to be downloadable mods off of the workshop. And my mod in particular is not one that is public releasable. That made it pretty simple. Safe. So if you like having things, and I've actually played quite a few games, so you have multiple, which is really meteor storms, is what this is. So normal, there's a meteor storm like every half hour or so, I think, give or take. Now the meteor storms, and I don't want to turn this into a rant, but are a little bit unrealistic, I think, because if you take meteor storms, space is a big place, and if you consider there are meteor showers happening constantly everywhere, but they're not happening everywhere constantly. And no, that wasn't just a play on words. So if you think about space engineers, then the meteors are always falling on you, which is kind of not realistic. They would be falling over here, and then over there, and then way over there, and then maybe a little closer, and then way over there again. They're falling everywhere. They're not just focused in on you. And what I found in space engineers, which can be a lot of fun, mind you, but they're always falling on your head. So it's kind of one of those, that's really annoying. I think I'll just turn that off. And there are other games where you're playing and you really want that realism, that you do have some adversity coming at you all the time. So anyway, normal about, I think, every half hour or so. Cataclysm, pretty serious. I would say about every 5 to 10 minutes, then you have a meteor storm inbound. Armageddon, it's marked there as unrealistic. It is, but it can be fun. When you are totally dancing around trying to avoid being hit, then there are some moments of fun. If you are, after all, just wanting to be somewhere where the environment is totally hostile, excuse me, then this may be the way to go. Another very useful function here with this is you are wanting to kind of set up a derelict space station or spacecraft or something, and it takes a lot of time to go through and grind things or ram things into it, so you can actually let the game do that for you. So I would say within a couple hours you could take your spacecraft, your favorite blueprint, and res it in the world, and then turn Armageddon on for quite a little while, hour or two, and you will have successfully punched it full of all kinds of holes. So fun stuff. So safe. Block limits. Block limits was introduced as a way to cut down lag. Obviously those blocks have a surface area, and that surface area has to render on your screen in one way or another. So it becomes really a function of the capability of your GPU. GPUs, as the case may be. So whether you turn this on or off is really a personal preference. It is entirely dependent upon your GPU and really the horsepower of your machine. So whether you want to use it or not, I found block limits to be a bit limiting. There were a couple ships that I had created, one of which I want to kind of do a series on, which is to take it from the current modded version that it is, and it's a monstrosity. I called it the Interstellar Transport, and it truly is interstellar. It has a absolutely massive solar array on it, and it's hydrogen powered, and the intention was that this ship is literally designed for interstellar transport. So it's got a bazillion jump drives, you know, the whole shebang. So what I wanted to do is turn this into a vanilla ship. It has some really neat mods on it, but I think it would be really fun to make a purely vanilla one. Sorry, it's been a long week. Long work week. Will be a longer work week next week. Inspections next week. Ooh, fun. So would like to get a vanilla version of that done and put up on the workshop so other people can enjoy it. Is it a practical ship? No. Does it serve really any useful function in Space Engineers? Could you take it into battle? Could you do anything with it? And the answer is no. If you want a home base that can store absolutely everything you could possibly want to store and carry with you, then the answer is yes, you could use this one. Given its size, it actually does move fairly well. So kind of one of those interesting things. So autosave. Autosave again is personal preference. As you can see here, autosave saves the state of your world every 5 minutes or when exiting the game. If you are in a reasonably small world where you don't have 47 different ships or stations out there, then autosave is an okay thing. But when you have a lot of material in the game that ultimately has to be saved, and this is kind of an oxymoron, if you have a bunch of stuff, then you probably do want it to be saved. On the other side of that equation is every time the game autosaves, there's a very long pause as it's actually writing the data to the disk. Preparing the data and everything to be written, it can do that in the background, but when it's actually writing the disk, the game just kind of hangs. And if you're in the middle of stuff, now that's not to say that everybody that plays this game is OCD. For me, when my brain is doing what it's doing and I'm working through the building of the concept that's in my mind, and the game totally stutters, it completely screws me up. So I have this train of thought that's going and click, you know, build this block, build this block, build this block. Okay, here we go. Build this block, and then all of a sudden, then it totally hoses me. So that's me. So I tend to turn autosave off, and I get to great saving places in the game and do a manual save. Now, does the occasional clang happen where you've worked for 2.5 hours on something and you forgot to save, and then clang strikes and you lost the last 2.5 hours of your life that you'll never get back? Yep, that happens. So not necessarily a good thing. So there's trade-offs. Not losing your work is a great thing. Okay, mods. Let's go to advanced first. So you can bounce around an awful lot here. So obviously creative or survival. There's a lot of things, a lot of functionality of the game that are turned off in creative. I know that was a total duh statement, but there's a lot of things that if you're building purely in creative, they may not work in survival. So I like building in survival because if they break in survival, then I know they're broken and I can fix them. If they're broken in creative, I don't necessarily know about it because there's so much functionality in the game that is turned off. So if I am building, I tend to run survival regardless, and then turn on Space Master because the inventory system is still working, the refineries inventory is still working, refining speed, assembler speed, all of that's still completely functional in survival. So kind of one of those things. Inventory size, well, there's a lot of argument either way, and it really depends on your purity of interpretation as to what is survival, what is vanilla, what can you use in the game, and what can't you. So if I were truly to do a survival series, then obviously the suit that I normally work with is a no-go. For those of you who are watching the series closely, you notice that when I was running on 3, I had a 60,000 liter inventory space. So realistic, which is to say the base inventory for that particular suit is 20K, 20,000. Why did I do that? Yes, that's modded, clearly. Why did I do that? Again, because of the way my OCD works. Now, everybody's OCD is a little different, so my OCD works as I'm in a train of thought. I want to continue in that train of thought doing what I need to do. If I run out of materials, that's fine, because that's just part of the things. That's part of life. You run out of materials and you have to go get more. So I can deal with that. The fact that I have to stop 800 times to build a refinery, I find to be kind of annoying. I want to get it done. So I build all the materials, and while there is a certain realism that can I truly carry 1,500 steel plate with me, and the answer is yes and no. I'm in space, there's no gravity, so the mass of those objects, they're not heavy per se. They represent a significant mass, certainly, but I can move them. So however you want to imagine that in your mind, so I wrap a line around them and then drag them with me over to the site and start installing them. When I work on a job site, when I do volunteer work or something, I put all the parts and pieces and tools and everything that I think I'm going to need in my truck. I drive to the site and do the work. So I don't have to run back and forth from my house to the site, so there's a certain amount of realism that you can argue in either direction. So why do I use the inventory sizes I do? Because it's just frustrating to be building something and I'm 30 seconds into it and I'm out of parts. I have to go back, get more, build some more, go back, get more, build some more. To me, it really takes away from the fun of the game. Is it still arguably extremely realistic? Well, yes, of course, but so anyway, again, personal preference. So I hesitated for a long time going out to that 10 times inventory in the series, and you notice it bounced around a little bit. I started out, I think I did start out at realistic, which was the base size, and that was only for like 1 or 2 episodes, because as I really got to putting stuff into storage, even a large container in the game at 400,000 liters is consumed extremely quickly. Problems. So went right to 3, and then as I really started running out of space multiple times, not only in the refineries but the assemblers and everything else, and then that compounded the fact that I had run out of space in the main containers, really started putting detrimental wrinkles into things. So it was like, okay, do I focus on building more containers, and how many people really want to watch, you know, the building of 20 more containers? What's the fun in that? So I decided, okay, I'll go ahead and go to 10. So I went to 10. Assembler efficiency, that's, again, depending on how you view realism. One of the things, so they used to show quotes on the startups, and a lot of it was, you know, in the Wikipedia 2077, blah, 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 blah. So clearly the setting for this environment is after 2077. If we're quoting something that was written in 2077, then obviously we have to be after that date. So I'm thinking we have had the ability, we have the technology to make it to space. And if you look at some of the blocks and cubes and stuff in the game, they are pretty impressive. So if we have the technologies to do these things, take an assembler that I can just put in materials, these ingots, and pitch them into this magic box, and out comes these components. That's pretty impressive technology. I mean, we can't do that today. So, you know, if in the next, you know, 40, 50 years, we manage to come up with some of the technologies like those that are represented in the game, the projector, how about? Then I think we have technologies that exceed what the vanilla game portrays, which is why I like mods. I know there's a lot of people out there who don't like mods. They say survival is vanilla, period. So I refer to all you folks affectionately as the purists. I'm not a purist. Never have been, probably never will be. I tend to be, I'm all about having fun. And if I can't have fun within the scope of vanilla, which is not always true, I've done a lot of building in the vanilla. I've not uploaded a lot of material to the workshop, but I really do have quite a few things that are vanilla. The last couple of things that I've actually uploaded to the workshop have been the tutorial stuff, and they are entirely vanilla. So it's not that I'm devoid of having fun within the vanilla world. But so assembler speed, refinery speed, it's really up to you and how you want to do things, how fast you want to accomplish something. I can only sit around watching grass grow for so long. Which is one of the reasons why I pulled out one of my Hellfire magic boxes and started doing the refining. It's why I have the totally overpowered drills on some mining craft. I don't mind mining. I just want it to be productive. And I think there is a certain amount of relaxation to apply a real-world principle. I love mowing my lawn. I have about 7 acres where I live that is mowable, and I truly find a very I can't really call it a profound piece, but it is a very relaxing, uplifting, unwinding time to be focused on absolutely nothing else than cutting grass. And I know that sounds totally silly, but keeping in mind I work in the world of engineering, and I work within the world of engineering inside a military scope. So there are stressors there. So getting away from the stressors, where my absolutely only concern is to make sure I cut in a straight line, is relaxing. So yes, this different people find the strangest things to be relaxing. So off we go. Welding and grinding speed, again, your personal preference. Do you want to wait all day when you're welding something or grinding something down, or do you want it to happen relatively quickly or quickly, and that's personal preference. To me, I want to get stuff done, so I have in this series put it on number 5. Max objects, your choice. The game gives you a little warning here that anything over 64 objects can significantly affect performance, and that is true. You get a lot of objects out there. They can definitely take up some CPU horsepower. Why is that? Because every object that is floating in the game requires calculations. So is that object hitting something else? Yes, no. How fast is it moving? You know, all those sorts of things. Does it impact with an asteroid, and what is the damage caused with that? You know, all those kinds of things that is calculated on a per object basis. So it can, you know, be crazy. Maximum backup save. So backups are happening in the background. They are doing stuff. How many do you want to save? 5 is a good number. Max ship size. Now this comes into play if you have turned on block limits. So both of these are about block limits. Limit world size. If something strays outside of the world size, it will be deleted. So if it leaves the game area, if you look at that second line, all objects that leave the game area will be removed from the game. This can be really good, especially in a survival environment where you've got multiple players. They're all building stuff, and you know, clang happens. So you know, you run your small mining drone into the side of an asteroid through no fault of your own. It just all of a sudden was no longer responding to controls, and now it has shattered itself, and I use that word very specifically, against the side of this asteroid, and pieces are everywhere. And it's a challenge to go through and clean stuff up, which is to say really find them all and delete them, grind them down, you know, all that sort of stuff. So this can actually improve things. And again, those become objects, and every object that is in motion in the game or still in the game, so it doesn't even have to be in motion, requires calculations. The game has to determine, has this changed in status, and what is that status? So anyway, ship respawn cooldown, you can play with this and figure out what it really means, and I've never really figured out what it means. So obviously you can change how often that respawn ship, but as they teach you in math, it's all fine to put a variable into your equation, but what is the variable? And I'm sure it says somewhere what the default timeline is, but I don't know what that is. View distance. Obviously everything that is in view at any given time. So this can, and view is, I want to say, within your radius. So you are setting the view radius. Now, why does this become a large-scale performance issue? Is because view is not about what you can see on the screen. It is about what is within your the entire spherical radius of you. So something that is completely behind you, so it is not on your screen, is still being, I hate to say rendering, because rendering usually implies some sort of visual, but the game knows about that stuff and is within your sphere, so it has to deal with it. So it can be a large-scale hit. For those of you who are math savvy, keeping in mind that as a sphere is larger and larger, there is a incredible volume there. What is the volume of spheres? I'll have you look that up, but if you play with the numbers, As your sphere gets larger and larger, the volume of that sphere gets incredibly large, incredibly fast. So I'll let you look up the formula for the volume of a sphere if you are so inclined. Otherwise, I won't bore you with that. Day duration. Why is this grayed out? Because I have sun rotation turned off. For those of you who are actually aware of astral mechanics, the sun doesn't move. I mean, it does, if you consider the galactic perspective. But the planets are in orbit around the sun. Now, why does space engineers who is trying to apply real-world physics, so let me roll this down, they're trying to apply real-world physics, but yet we have the sun in orbit of the planets. Why did we do that? Voxels are stationary fixed objects within the game environment. So the problem with trying to make voxels move then completely changes one of the foundational premises of the game. So how do we do that? Because the sun doesn't actually exist, it was much, much easier to implement the sun, a great gigantic ball of light, in the case of the game, because obviously there is no heat in the game other than you're melting down different things with your thrusters. So the sun has no radiant heat. It is just a light source, a giant light source to be sure, but a light source. So what do we have here? Well, auto healing, pretty self-explanatory. Enable spectator. So this disables your F8 if you turn this off. Show player names. Now this is turned off because this is a solo world. There aren't going to be any other players. You can't see your own name, so clients can save. Obviously, because I'm the local client running on my machine, the world is running on my machine, so don't need that. Permanent death. If you die and you have no medical room available, then everything that you own becomes owned by nobody. You're dead. So you lose, basically you lose ownership of everything. Cargo ships. Cargo ships spawn a random ship traveling in a random direction, usually above 20 meters per second. So 24, somewhere between 24 and 30 meters per second. And they are just traveling through. Now they might be hostile. In fact, most of them are. But they become a fantastic source of parts. So if you are truly having trouble mining things, you don't have an assembler, so you've got a boatload of raw materials, but you have no assembler, and so you can't manufacture components. Thus you cannot manufacture a refinery. Then you're in a bad way, and the only choices are to go out ship hunting and pirate these ships, grind them down to components, and then use those components for other things. So cargo ships. In-game scripts. There's goods and bads here. If you turn this off, then no scripts will run in the game. 9 times out of 10, scripts are, any script, whether you knew about them or not, are what cause sometimes some very severe lag. The problem is there are a lot of really neat mods that are doing what they do because of a script. So if you turn this off, you will break those mods because they can no longer run, because their scripts can't run. So they end up not doing anything. To me, enable oxygen and enable airtightness go one and the same. I'm not sure what the differentiation there. Would you ever need airtightness and not have oxygen enabled? I wouldn't think so. So I'm not sure used by space. So I truly don't know why pressurization of ships, but if you have oxygen turned off, then what are you pressurizing your ship with? So anyway, okay, never mind. That answered that question. So if you turn that one off, that one automatically gets turned off. But you can have oxygen without being able to pressurize your station, I guess. Yeah. So anyway, random encounters. As it says here, random abandoned ships and stations can be encountered. Admittedly, I've turned this on a bunch of times, and I've never found anything. So I want to see it happen. Enable sun rotation. Does it add some realism? Absolutely. When you're playing on planets, it adds a boatload of realism. And it's kind of fun to have this on. The reason I tend to turn this off is, one, because I understand astrophysics a little bit. Caveat that a little bit. I'm not an astrophysicist, which is why I say a little bit. I can't deal with the planet being the fixed objects and the sun is rotating around the universe. I just can't digest that. So I have an issue with that. But realism on the planet, it serves its function, so I understand, and I do use it occasionally. Unsupported stations. By enabling this option, grids will no longer turn dynamic when disconnecting from static grids. So what does that mean? When you disconnect, it becomes, well, connecting turned it into a static grid. So when you disconnect, yes, it does indeed disconnect, but it no longer turns back into a ship. It is now a ship, which is a static grid, and unless you figure out, oh, well, damn, this turned itself into a station, I need to turn it back into a ship, which then, this one, enable convert to station. You actually get the option of turning it back into a ship, too. So, kind of interesting there. So, they have this, and I don't really know why you would ever want to turn that on, but anyway, it's an option there. Spawn with tools. Well, if you die, it's kind of nice to have tools. Why is that? Because you might be a long ways from your body. So your carcass is out there. Everything you were carrying at the time you died is out there with it, and you may or may not be able to get to your body in time. So again, this is kind of one of those 50-50 things, whether you're a purist or want to be a little more realistic and not just totally hinder yourself because you died. Kind of one of those things. Enable voxel destruction. I think that one's a bit self-explanatory. What is a voxel? Well, the world, the planets, and all the asteroids are made up of voxels. And if they are indestructible, then, well, mining goes out the door, because destruction of those voxels yields materials for you. So if you turn that off, it's good if you're crashing a lot of stuff, but not so good if you're trying to do things like mining. Enable wolves. I really did like the cyberhounds. I love animals, and I have worked with wolves. One of the other, I guess, background things is engineering pays the bills, but the animals are what have made my world spin. So I'm 30. Let me figure this out here. So 82, I started learning about big cats and have worked with them on and off for, well, 82, and now it's 2017, which means 35 years. So 35 years of working with, studying, learning, playing with big cats, and I have done a lot of work with wolves over that same period of time. Not as much, but so I don't like wolves. Which is to say, I don't like wolves and space engineers, because 9 times out of 10 I have to kill them, and I really don't appreciate killing wolves. I didn't mind killing cyberhounds. So I know there's mods out there that turns the wolves back into cyberhounds, but I really don't like the wolves in the game, so I tend to turn that one off. Drones. Pirate ship will spawn drones. Spiders. Spiders you'll encounter on any of the alien planets and, from what I've seen, the alien moons. So, spiders. Alien spiders. I don't like spiders even in real life. So, anyway, that's what those are. This is my typical setting thing. So, okay, and back to mods. Or actually 2 mods. Not very many here. What are all these? Kenti Blocks is my mod, my personal mod. It does a lot of interesting things. It creates blocks in the game that kind of remove some of the limits that I have stumbled on and found to be very frustrating. Instead of making 800 gyros, I can put down 5 or 6 of them. As you saw in the last episode, where the engineer has actually converts the space station into a ship and flies away, he puts down 12 gyros. So Kenti gyros are about 100 times the mechanical force, so the moment force, of a regular gyro. Why did I do that? Because when you're building a really big ship, it gets very, very heavy very quickly, and if half of the space on your ship is consumed by gyros and you still can't turn it, then it's kind of a pain in the butt. So I came up with Kenti gyros, which is true of a lot of the blocks, and we'll do a dare I say showcase of the Kenti blocks one of these days. Combined mod, I've talked about this one before. Drifting Thoughts. So Drifting Thoughts. Drifting Thoughts came up with a bunch of mods. They're not really supported anymore. Haven't seen Anka Jaguar out there for a long time, but so I have my favorites, and I think this is about 3 or 4 different mods that, rather than loading those 3 or 4 mods in, which take 3 or 4 different memory spaces to make all those happen, so each an independent mod, I put them all into one, so it's one thing, and I have all those mods available, such as the armored camera, the extended conveyor tubes, and the interior conveyors are 3 of the mods that are within this this particular mod. Darth Biomech. So we have things like the docking ring, the big gate, the cryopods, AI core. So there's actually 6 different mods that I have found wonderful. Power lines is another one. And Darth Biomech has dropped out of the modding world. Excuse me. At least for now. So what I wanted to do is, again, instead of loading 6 mods, I load 1. So I took all of those mods, dumped them into a local format mod, combined the various files that make it work, so the under the hood stuff, and poof, there they are. These are not published, and they're not published for a reason, because I don't have permission to have made these mods from the mod authors. So they're just local mods. They're things that I use in a private environment. Text HUD API. So this basically allows for other mods to put information onto your screen in the game in a standardized way. Application Programming Interface. Okay, so it just enables a lot of mod users, mod creators, a simple and consistent way to put text onto your screen. So I loaded this in. If you have not played Duck Roll's Escape from Mars, you're totally missing out, for one. There's quite a few YouTubers out there who have done the series. Probably one of the most noteworthy is Wasted Space, who basically hosted, but is joined by Texfire and Wedgehog. So they run their way through that entire game and just have a blast doing it. I mean, multiple Clang events. Sometimes just leave you shaking your head. Other times you're as frustrated as they are. But awesome experience. There's probably I want to say 50 hours of video out there on that. Good stuff. Anyway, this was in use for that mod, but there are quite a few mods out there that are using this, mods that are designed to put information on the screen. So I have started to use that. It doesn't appear to cause any lag that I can detect at all, and I don't know that I have the proper tools that would be able to detect it, but I've noticed nothing. Mid-space's admin helper commands I cannot read. This adds it is a script that runs in the background that, I mean, you don't even really notice it's there, but it, as it says here, admin helper commands for both single player and multiplayer are a set of script chat commands that you can quickly type in. So literally from the chat line in the environment, you can do things. For those of you who watched through the series, you actually saw me use that a couple times. One of my favorite commands is the stop command. If you are working in a survival environment and you accidentally bump into something, for example, that station that was in the first, the first discovery, that satellite station, and that station in generic vanilla form is actually up on my Steam Workshop. So when I res that into the world, I set it as a station, and the reason I did that was because I want it pointed at the sun, and I don't want to have to worry about anything. But magically, it changes into a station. So when I rammed into it with the miner, which was totally unexpected because I wasn't watching my screen and didn't actually realize I had run out of hydrogen, then all of a sudden my miner is floating off in one direction without my ability to do anything, and at the same time this station that was supposed to be a fixed object in space. Now granted, realistic, a satellite is not going to be a fixed object in space, but for the purposes of that series, I wanted it to be fixed, so I had changed it into a station for the reason of I wanted it to be a static grid, and it magically changed itself, and whether we call that a bug or a clang or whatever else, it was that oops. So I actually used the stop command right there on the video, and I tried to kind of avoid doing a lot of that stuff because I tried to stay in character. So anyway, admin helper commands. This is on the workshop. I highly recommend it. It can make your life easy, especially if you're not doing pure survival stuff all the time. Automatic ore pickup. What does this do? They have incorporated ore pickup in all of the drills, which is to say all of the ship and station drills. It incorporated it. It has not incorporated your hand drill. I want to say you lose about 40 or 50% of the ore that you drill. It just goes roaming off in a direction, and you have to stop drilling and go get it. Now, I find that very frustrating because, again, that's my OCD. I want to be focused in on what I'm doing, and if I'm drilling and have to stop every 10 seconds, every 2 seconds, to go get stuff because it's roaming away on me, I find that to be absolutely annoying. So this script, everything you drill goes directly into your inventory. When your inventory fills up, obviously it goes out and is roaming. So we didn't really see the use of easy inventory here, and the reason why is it's kind of when I was off screen, then I would build all of this stuff and work everything up, and then come back on for the next the visual log, I called it. So we didn't really see easy inventory. If you want to see easy inventory work, there's a lot of folks out there who are using it very successfully. It's called Exploring with Torpedoes, or Experimenting with Torpedoes. It's a series that, as of this moment, I have not started to upload it yet. But I use it a lot in that. It literally, how it works is you have whatever item that you're trying to build on your toolbar. Now, keeping in mind, you have to turn Space Master off. If Space Master is on, disaster. Because remember, right click is delete. So if you're in Space Master, it will delete, and if you have a cargo container that's full of all kinds of components, you just deleted the cargo container, you let all these components out into the universe, and they'll go off in every bazillion different directions. So Space Master off. Remember, Space Master off. Because easy inventory uses your right click. So you select the item you want to build, you hover on the container which contains the components you need to build, you right click, and it will literally take all of those items from the container into your inventory. It does its best to remember if you have a very small inventory. It does its best to remember where you were at, so you can actually come back and do this multiple times and said, okay, you've already taken those, so this is what I'm going to give you. So it's an amazing script. It can really help you in survival, and I still kind of look at this and say this is within the spirit of even vanilla survival. Again, hats off to the author of this one. And you can look that up. There's only one easy inventory. Conveyor expansion. This is all the conveyor blocks that are missing. So you have a T, you have a cross, you have a corner, you have an edge. So all the things you're missing. Docking cameras. Docking cameras are cameras that literally are mounted inside a connector. So when you turn on this camera, you have the viewpoint of that connector, which means if you're trying to connect onto another connector, you're just aiming right for it. So these are wonderful. So good stuff. Airlock block. What is the airlock block? It's a single block, which is, say, 2.5 meters by 2.5 meters by 2.5 meters. One single block that has a door on both sides. There's two versions. There's a I can't see through it version, and then a windowed version. So it's nice because you don't have to build two blocks to create an airlock. This is an airlock all by itself. Wonderful, wonderful mod. Cargo teleporter. So this annoys an awful lot of people, I know. Cargo teleporter. Well, here again, why do I use this? Does it totally, kill the realism of the game? And I say no. Okay. And this is kind of based on one of the conceptualizations of Nikola Tesla. If you don't know that name, I would say Google him. Some of his inventions were profoundly in front of their time. So anyway, he had theorized that because of this relationship between matter and energy that Einstein later actually defined, that we should be able to literally transmit matter through the air from point A to point Z. So this cargo block, Paycas is who put this out originally, no longer supporting the block, but it still functions. This is the radio antenna version, which is the limits of your RF antennas, your radio frequency antennas. So this does not work with laser antennas. It only works with radio antennas. And it works to the limits of those radio antennas. So as long as it can reach the other side, then it's all good to go. So you can use it on small ships as well as large ships. So I love these things. I use them on my mining craft. That way my miner does not have to stop and roll all of its cargo back, hook up to the station, transfer all the cargo, and then go out. Again, does this remove some realism? Yes, it does. On the flip side is, to me, realism is that we are in or beyond 2077. We have some absolutely amazing technologies. So we can now, and here's a conceptualization for you, why can we jump? Okay, which is taking a ship which has a significant mass and moving it in an instant to another location. So if we can do that with an entire ship, why can't I do that with cargo? Points to ponder. So with this mod, we can. Conveyor air vent. What is a conveyor air vent? A conveyor air vent, this is made by Digi, by the way. If your Digi has absolutely amazing shit on the workshop. I mean, amazing stuff. Brought you the aerodynamics mod. I mean, incredible stuff. So, conveyor air vent. What does it do? It takes a conveyor, pretty straightforward, puts an air vent on one side. So it's a flush mounted thing. It acts as a conveyor, but it also acts as an air vent. I love these things. Okay, it doesn't have to be surface mounted. I put it in as a conveyor. I can use the conveyor as a conveyor, but I have an air vent there. So I love this thing. So I use it. Energy weapons. Well, you'll just kind of have to look at them. It's another. There's 75,000 different weapons mods out there. Why do I like this one? Well, it's a laser for one. And actually it works very well. So if you are in an environment where there is a boatload of meteors coming in at you all the time, you want this mod, because the lasers, which are the lower power of the two weapons that this one introduces, there's a plasma cannon and the laser. The lasers absolutely devastate meteors. It's fun to watch them because it locks up and fires and it's all done. I love those things. So these are cool. This is exactly why those particular weapons were on the space station, the station there that we built. All right, conveyor air vent, energy shields. You saw the energy shields. I didn't talk anything about them because conceptually that particular engineer doesn't know about these. Or he might, but didn't really say very much about them. So energy shields, again, a mod that actually absorbs damage, whether it be from weapons, impacts, running your ship into an asteroid, which is an impact. So anyway, so this introduces both a large and a small shield grid for large grids and small grids. So neat stuff. I have not seen this one broken, so it seems to function very well, but I couldn't say whether or not it is actually still being supported. I have no idea. EZO's upgrade module. There's a couple upgrade modules out there. EZO has two, and I apologize to EZO if I'm pronouncing that wrong. So there's just one upgrade module, which actually in a single module takes the place of all three vanilla modules. So it does the functions of all three of those. And this one has the shield. This is the shield variant, which you can actually use this module on the shield generators, as well as upgrading your refineries or assemblers, which is exactly why I used it, because I can use it in the game. Now the only thing, the caveat there was that when I was building on the space station, the satellite, and upgrading, I used vanilla parts. So the station, right up until towards the end, so I put on a teleporter, and I put on a mega refinery, which is part of my mods, and I put on a elsewhere container, which solved all of my containment problems. But that was that. So anyway, ease upgrade modules. So I used the standard vanilla upgrades modules on the original satellite, but the station itself had ESO upgrade modules. OCD, I did not bring any of these in, but this is, if you ever were very frustrated because the hydrogen tank is so friggin' huge that it makes it very hard to put into any kind of ship builds, then this tank mods is for you. I love this thing. This is another extremely well done mod. They're now airtight. They have glass on them now. So really cool. It gives you a lot of different options when it comes to the tanks, both hydrogen and oxygen. You have 3 basic variants for both large and small grids, which is a 1 block, a 2 block, and a 3 block long. The 3 block long, which I started using almost exclusively, actually has a conveyor port in the middle on all sides. So you have the 2 on the ends, and then you have 4 around the middle. So that middle block of the 3 actually has conveyor ports. So awesome. I love this mod, so I highly recommend this. It improves your life. Twin welders and grinders, they are their own models in the game. So if we consider the game welders and grinders, this is large ship and small ship, you have about a block and a half-ish radius. So if you imagine a little ball, a spherical ball on the end, that everything that is within that sphere is going to be affected, whether it's the welding or the grinding. Okay, these mods, 2 independent mods. I would love for this author, who isn't extremely active, and I don't know of anything else they've actually made. I wish they would release 1 mod with both of these in it. I think that would be really, really cool. But twin welders and grinders. So your this spherical ball on the end, that's the magical space where everything happens, is about 5 blocks. So when you are welding, you can actually accomplish a lot with this these grinders and welders. So very, very powerful. Love them. Scaffolding. What is scaffold? In this case, it takes a light armor block and the build state 1 for the light armor block. And what this mod author has done is take 4 blocks, so the block, the slope, the inverted corner, and the corner, and set the finished block to be that build state 1. So it's done. It's a complete block, but is in the state of that build state. So it is literally this framework. And a lot of people they grind down the blocks to the base state to get this visual effect. So this does it with a completed block. Why is that a problem? Because if you have any mods out there that, such as the Nanite Control Factory, it does that, which I just totally skipped there, didn't I? Then it will finish all those blocks. So you weld them down, it finishes them. So you're not welded down anymore. So if you have a ship or station that has Nanite Control Factories, and you save that as a blueprint, and you want to share that with others, and you have these ground down pieces, you're not going to be able to do that, because the Nanite Control Factory is going to see, oh, that's not done, and finish it for you. And I don't know of any way to turn that off. So let's get back up to, we were talking about OCG tanks. So the next one on the list there is a Prosimian Production Armored Conveyors. Now those of you who've been around in Space Engineers a while back remember, there was an armored conveyor mod out there, and it became abandoned. So it was basically an armored block, but it had conveyors through it. Now, Persimmon Productions, they took that concept, created their own models, which is basically the same thing. It is an armored conveyor. Okay, so it stands up to a lot of the riggers. So I use that in an awful lot of my builds. In fact, you saw that quite a bit. So all of those conveyors that looked like they were surrounded by glass, which in fact they are, that was the armored conveyors. So that build does use those, which is why this is still a part of active. Nanite control factories. These are resource hungry from hell. But just like you saw in the series, building that first one was a nightmare. But once I got it built, oh, the time it saved. And then eventually got the second one built. So they're neat. Does it totally take it out of the world of realism? Well, again, that's your personal preference. So anyway, that's the mods that was used. I know I really ran way beyond what I intended to do, but in the end, I wanted to just share with you the mods that were used in the series and tell you a bit about them. And as you play Space Engineers, you can decide whether you want to use them as well. I have gotten a lot of enjoyment out of this. This is my kind of standard mod set. I have a very in-depth, you can see I've got a boatload of different mods over here that are not in the game. A couple of them I absolutely love. This Keisters decorations. There's a part 1 and a part 2. You can see these up here. Obviously Darth Biomech stuff and Drifting Thought stuff are all in here. So a lot of stuff. You can see I have a lot of the weapon stuff in here as well. So definitely a lot of stuff. Dead Tech is another. You got to look at their Steam Workshop. They've got a boatload of stuff out there. This is just one of them. I think I've got like 3 Dead Tech mods loaded that are awesome. He's actually got has got, and what I mean by that is he or she. I don't know their gender, so I don't want to be incorrect there. They've got a cargo container, and there's 2 different cargo container mods. There is one that is just static containers that you have like in a shipyard or something, that you would have these containers laying around, just kind of cargo laying around in a cargo bay or something. And then there's another one where you actually have containers that are real containers. You can put stuff in it. So a lot of neat stuff from Dead Tech. So anyway, my standard mods here, and then my total mods, where I have I think 97 or 96 different mods going at once, which is definitely a large scale version, much more. But it becomes a function of loading time. So this loads in about 2 minutes, whereas my 97 mods takes about 10. You can go and get a cup of coffee and do a head call in the time it takes to load. So anyway, that's what this video is really all about, was just sharing with you what the mods used in the series. And eventually I'll probably do one from Kenti blocks, because there were actually a lot of blocks that I used in the game that were Kenti blocks. So I might actually do a kind of a showcase video just about Kenti blocks. So with that having been said, I will bid adieu, and we will see you next time. Kenti Tiger out.